Hey, sorry I was gone yesterday. Some things came up and I just couldn't be here, but I'm here today. So I know that Friday I said I was going to talk about aging, and we'll save that for another day because I stumbled on some really interesting information about thyroid and insulin resistance, and I wanted to share it because I know that I've shared that, I had tried some thyroid therapy here a few months ago. And now that I understand a few more things about it, I kind of question the decision to even do that for me. So, we're going to go over a number of things between thyroid and insulin resistance and why this is another area where it makes it so that calories just don't count. Like, yeah, again, if you're eating 5,000 calories a day, you're going to have a problem. But what about the rest of us who are doing the same type of diet, the same amount of calories, a similar um, activity level as some other people, and other people are losing weight like crazy? And although the rest of your health is getting better, you're stuck with your weight. So I talk a lot about insulin resistance and that being a big cause of weight gain. And yet there's another hormone that plays in this whole metabolic thing, and that's your thyroid hormone. So let's start with this. And I'm going to explain what's happening with insulin resistance. I'm not a thyroid specialist. I'm not a doctor, a nutritionist, any of that. I'm just a woman who got really sick and has been on a mission to figure out what's going on with my health and help it get better, and then share that with you as I go along, because doctors were not helping me, even though I worked for a number, even in hormone clinics. So, actually, in a hormone clinic, I had one doctor come and tell me that my metabolic type was the worst she'd ever seen, and that there was nothing she was ever going to be able to do to help me, and that I was always going to have all the issues I have, and that was just the trajectory of my life. So, why I do this is because I suffered, I was gaslit, I felt hopeless. I thought nothing was getting better. I spent so many nights in bed crying because I just wanted to feel better, and nobody was able to address it until I did this one thing. And it's the protocol I'm going to talk about. And that led me to understanding this whole thing called insulin resistance and why I got better from so many things that I was unexpected, including having my thyroid symptoms and my thyroid levels level out. A lot to unpack. So I'm going to try and give you, just a bird's eye view, because I'm not going to be like Dr. Bickman and talk about all the papers and stuff, but here we go. When we look at metabolism and before I get started, welcome in. I get talking and I forget. Like, I appreciate everyone that's here. I would love if you put in the chat where you're from. But I also want to know how many of you struggle with thyroid or your weight. Either one, just put a 1 in the chat if you're suffering from, well, actually, a 1 for thyroid and a 2 for weight, because I want to go over that, and I want to know if it's okay with you. I would love to know what you've tried and what you're experiencing and what doctors have been telling you about your weight. If you want to share, I would love to know. And I'm not claiming to know more. I'm just saying I spend a lot of time listening to newer studies. So I'm not listening to stuff from 20 years ago. I'm listening to the most current stuff. So a lot going on. All right, insulin resistance. I'll unpack all of that in a little bit. But what we need to know at this moment is that insulin carries energy to the cells and unlocks the cells to let the energy in. Insulin is or not insulin, thyroid is that regulator that tells our body how to use that energy. So the interesting thing I found out this morning that kind of blew my mind, and let's try to unpack this a little bit. But there's such an intricate interplay between insulin resistance and thyroid. Number one, I'm not going to say that the protocol that I use can cure thyroid. I'm going to tell you it's helped thousands of women like me start to feel better from thyroid symptoms. And we'll look at a couple of the reasons why that could be. Does it cure hypothyroid or hyperthyroid? No, but it supports your body in having better levels, which is what it did for me. So now when we look at thyroid levels, if you have too little thyroid, so there's the normal panel is T4, T3, and TSH. let's break those down real quick first so you can kind of understand what those numbers are on your labs. Hopefully it will help it make sense. TSH is thyroid stimulating hormone. It's the hormone that goes out and tells your body, hey, we need thyroid hormone, produce it. It produces T4. T4 is an inactive form of thyroid, kind of like stored reserves around the body, and T3 is the active form of thyroid. Now, as your body needs the regulation, it can convert the T4 into the T3, which is the active form, really telling your body how to address its metabolic rate or how well it deals with the energy that we're bringing into the body. So insulin's delivering it, thyroid's dictating how it gets used. So the interesting thing I found this morning is hyperthyroidism, where the thyroid is running really fast and people tend to be lean, actually tend to be less insulin sensitive at their fat cells. So more insulin resistant at their fat cells. Am I getting this right? Yes. And they have a lot of insulin in their system. So hyperthyroid patients tend to have about twice as much insulin as hypo. So there still is a link between insulin resistance and that thyroid. Now, what's happening with the hyperthyroid, if I can unpack all this and make sense in my brain too, because the cells are more insulin, um, because there's more insulin and the hyperthyroid is not converting the fats out of the insulin, or the insulin receptors are changing how the fats are converted. It allows that person to be thin, and yet they're still technically insulin resistant. A hypothyroid patient has less insulin receptors on their cells. So that's how it was. Hyperthyroid has more insulin receptors on their cells, but they're a little bit insulin resistant. So although they have more receptors to take it in, insulin's just not functioning properly, but they're staying lean because the fat cells are able to utilize the insulin in a different way than it is with hypothyroid. Now, with hypothyroid, less insulin receptors, but the fat cells are more insulin sensitive. So if the fat cells are insulin sensitive, they're taking on more energy, you're gaining weight. Okay, so low thyroid is more sensitive at the fat cell to insulin, and that's why the weight gain. So if the cells are insulin sensitive and they're bringing fat in, then as long as that insulin level is high, it's not going to allow you to break down fats. That's a little kind of like interplay in there. Now, some of the other things with this, when you have low thyroid or high thyroid, it can actually kick you into insulin resistance. So my estimation why the system is working so well for people with hyper or hypothyroid is that it's just taking one piece away, so that that insulin resistance piece that's going awry because of all of this, and aside of all of this, the thyroid is actually able to work a little better when the insulin resistance is down, because insulin resistance exacerbates all of those actions in either hyper or hypothyroid. Whew, that was a lot. So a couple of other interesting things. Will you guys put a 1 in if you've heard that you can't fast with hypo or hyperthyroidism, that it's actually really bad for your metabolism and you shouldn't fast, that could damage your thyroid to do some intermittent fasting. Okay. So because of this, if we understand this interaction between hypothyroid or hyperthyroid and insulin, and that there's really this second player in the game, insulin, and what's actually happening when you're eating every 2 hours, when you're eating constantly, you're constantly spiking your insulin, and now your insulin is aggravating your thyroid. So Dr. Bickman, who wrote this book, Why We Get Sick, will say that he has not seen one study that shows that just shows that eating less or intermittent fasting is going to hurt your thyroid. Now, I did a couple of videos and I cannot remember the exact action because, again, I'm just a normal woman like everybody else out there. But the intermittent fasting myth about hurting your thyroid had a very specific action, and I'll have to go back and look at that to see what that was. But it was something that was not based, and it was not a holistic view of what's happening with intermittent fasting and thyroid. In fact, Dr. Bickman says that the intermittent fasting that I talk about is actually good for your thyroid, helps because we're getting the insulin levels down, we're getting the energy regulation or the energy delivery into the cells down, and there's a big interplay between thyroid and insulin in this way too. So if you have high T4, and this is where I'm not telling you to go look at your labs, I'm just telling you to be armed the next time you talk to your doctor and ask questions. But if your T4 is high and your T3 is low, there's two things that could be happening. So it could be that you're converting enough T4, you're getting enough thyroid hormone in, and you're converting T4 and it's getting utilized by your cells. But what may be happening is that the T4 isn't converting into the T3 that's helping your cells decide how to utilize the energy. And why would you be able to produce thyroid hormone but not convert it? Insulin is that thing that gets in the way that stops you from turning T4, the inactive form, into the active form. So if T4 is high, T3 is low, it very well may be that insulin, too much insulin in your bloodstream, is causing this slowdown of conversion from the inactive thyroid to the active thyroid. Now, even though you have active thyroid in your system, it's just not enough for your cells. Another thing could be that with insulin resistance, the more inflamed your cells get with insulin resistance, the less there tends to be thyroid hormone receptors on the cell that are usable as well. So now, not only are you not converting T4 into T3 because of insulin resistance, your cells, even if you have a normal amount of T3 and you're still suffering with weight, could be that they're not getting the T3 into the cell because of inflammation and insulin resistance. So if your T4, T3 levels look normal, but you're still gaining weight and you're still having problems with weight, but you have some of these other symptoms going on, you might want to start looking at insulin resistance as one of the ways that you can start to address your thyroid, because getting the insulin leveled out allows all of those hormones, from the production of the thyroid stimulating hormone to now we have T4, the inactive form that TSH is converting, to the conversion of T4 to T3. And insulin plays a role in every step there. So if we want to get control of it, the easiest thing we can do is to start to address the insulin resistance. Now, Dr. Bickman cautions, and this is where I got concerned with the doctor who had prescribed me thyroid, because all of my thyroid was in normal range, but it was my TSH that was a little bit low. So now that I dive in some more, what Dr. Bickman is saying is my TSH may be low because my body's getting enough thyroid in. However, maybe I'm not utilizing my T3, which seems to be in proper amounts in my body. It might not be using it as well. So it could be that I just need to give my insulin resistance more time for my body to start to heal from 40 years of insulin resistance, for that to continue to normalize. But certainly adding more thyroid in on top of what already looks like a normal level can actually be damaging to your metabolism, according to Dr. Bickman. As with all the hormones, there's a sweet spot we want to be at. So that's where we should be paying attention. And it gets really complicated. There's a number of, I was watching another doctor who's a thyroid specialist talk about all of these other things that we need to look at along with the thyroid to understand what's really happening with our thyroid. Things like basal metabolic rate, your morning blood glucose, the A1C blood glucose link all together. And rest, if you're not getting enough rest, that's causing problems with the thyroid and causing problems with insulin resistance as well. So what type of doctor specializes in this? An endocrinologist. Yeah, so Jackie says she's been doing 12-hour fasting, not even to the 16-hour yet, and her thyroid medication had to be reduced because she was supplementing with extra thyroid because she had hypothyroidism. She doesn't have to supplement with as much because she's intermittent fasting now. It's actually allowing her thyroid to start functioning more properly because the insulin resistance is starting to get under control. Is it possible to have hyperthyroidism and gain weight? Um, Hyperthyroidism generally is going to mean that your metabolic rate is burning so fast that you cannot store fat. With hyperthyroidism, there is a mechanism that makes it so your body just doesn't want to store fat. It's not holding on to it. It's not, although there are more insulin receptors on the cells, they're just not taking the cues from insulin to store fat as well. So it's kind of dumping it out. Um, but I have not heard of someone with hyperthyroidism and excess weight. Hyperthyroidism is actually often the opposite. And it reminds me of a lady that I knew in my late 20s when I still worked in soft goods. I worked for a ski wear company. Um, she worked in production, I worked in engineering, and she was always very lean. She could eat whatever she wanted, and it drove us all crazy. Tall, thin, beautiful. She could eat whatever she wanted. But what we didn't know is she was struggling because her body was starting to break down from this rapid conversion of and inability to gain fat. So they actually changed her diet. And you know what? This is going to lead into something else. How many of you guys have heard that? So number one, intermittent fasting is not bad for your thyroid. It will actually help your thyroid. No scientific study behind that claim. And go to my thyroid videos. I explain it in more detail in a couple of videos I did. So how many of you guys have heard that fat for insulin resistance for thyroid fat, you got to stay away from fat? Bad, 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 bad. We live in a world that always tells us fat is so bad, right? Remember the Susan Powder days when fat was the devil and everybody should be doing this high carbohydrate food, and that didn't work out very well, did it? But all right, so fat and thyroid fat and insulin resistance, that it's bad. Um, the test for finding this. So, what is the test for finding this simple blood work? I need to know if you're talking about thyroid or insulin resistance. And I want to get to something else here, which triggered me because I have a friend who is on the system and her cholesterol levels are high. Although some scientists are saying, or doctors are saying, don't pay attention to the total cholesterol. What I found out about thyroid and those cholesterol panels recently is this: if your HDL, if you look at your labs when we're talking about thyroid, and you say, "Hey, my labs are like with me. My labs are pretty well for my thyroid, but I'm still having some problems." Well, if your HDL is high, like really high, and your LDL is low, but your triglyceride level overall is high, that's an indicator, according to this thyroid specialist, that your thyroid is not functioning properly. So more than just those numbers, because he said you might have some of those numbers look great, but this other thing can be happening. So high HDL, low LDL, and high overall cholesterol is an indicator that it's not just an insulin problem. We got to address the insulin, but it could also be a thyroid problem. In that case, you're going to have to talk to your doctor. For me, I would recommend a more natural route of thyroid than Synthroid. I used to take Armor, and I recently had a compounded thyroid. But since my T4 and my T3 were in normal range, and my TSH was actually in normal range but low, I stopped doing it, and here's why. According to Dr. Bickman, if the TSH is low, but the other two numbers are in normal range, T4, T3, why my TSH is low? Because it doesn't need to produce so much thyroid. because my T4 levels, my T3 levels are right midline, right? So I'm producing the right amount of thyroid. It just comes down for me likely to be within my body's ability to utilize the thyroid. So now that's an approach I'm taking it seriously, and that's why I'm doing a 36 and 12 fast, and I'm doing some other things to try and help my body be more sensitive to the hormone levels that are there. So when we look at this whole thing, I'm going to slow down a second. How many of you guys get so frustrated with all these people that are like, yeah, that's some bullshit. Just do calories in, calories out. It's the only thing that works. It's the only, you guys are all crazy, and all this other stuff about hormones is some BS. It's just calories in, calories out. How many of you guys are frustrated with that? How many of you sat and cried at some point because you were so gaslit? You're trying to do all the things. People will look at you. And actually, there was a thyroid specialist who was saying, hey, I had people, this is kind of explains because I had people, she was talking with Dr. Bickman. I have people who come into the clinic and I give them this protocol. Some people will do amazing on it, start to lose weight, start to feel better. And some people will be like, Doc, I'm doing everything you told me, but it's just not working. Because it comes down, this part does come down to some genetics and how your thyroid is functioning in your system. So hormones, hormones have everything to do with your weight problem, as much, if not more, than this issue of calories. And they say, yeah, we can have a general idea, but are you ever really in a calorie deficit? They really can't measure that. Are you becoming more insulin sensitive so that your fat can convert properly? That's more likely to be the truth of the matter. So addressing insulin, understanding your thyroid, and then we're going to put one more piece in there today that I didn't intend to, cortisol. Those can all help you start to normalize your metabolic rate. My metabolic rate is still a little bit slow, but guess what? I'm 60. I was insulin resistant for probably 40 years. Lots of damage inside my body because of those years of insulin resistance. And at 60, my metabolic rate naturally slows down. So now I have a different battle than somebody who's 30 with the same issues. Intermittent fasting for insulin. Yes, intermittent fasting for. So the question is, so would you suggest intermittent fasting for insulin resistance? Absolutely. We're going to talk about those things here in just a minute. So hyperthyroid and gained weight too, not common, but it happens. Yeah, it's not, I can't imagine the mechanisms that are going on outside of the excess insulin receptors on your cells when you're hyperthyroid, and that there could be another dysregulation between what's happening with the fat cells, because you have more insulin receptors and the insulin is getting in there. There's some other defunct thing going on with your cells there and the conversion of energy in your system with that hyperthyroid if you're gaining weight. And I'm not the person to answer that. Definitely an endocrinologist would be. You've been having burning sensations and needing in the whole body, and A1C is 5.1. So what I would recommend is take a look at a couple of other numbers. If you, the easiest one to look at is going to be the triglyceride to HDL ratio. Because your A1C is 5.1 doesn't mean you're not insulin resistant. So let's talk about that really quickly. When you become insulin resistant, this is what's really happening. We're eating too much food too often. The eat every 2 hours story, that's so much unbased BS that I can't even unpack it all in this live. There's no scientific study that says eating every 2 hours helps your metabolism. In fact, it's dampening your metabolism. So we're in this society where we're being trained to eat all the time. Eat small meals, eat every 2 hours. But you know what happens is when they did scientific studies, most people who think they're eating every 2 hours are eating up to 12 to 16 times a day. 12 to 16 times a day, you're putting food in your face that's converting to glucose, that's spiking your insulin, and insulin takes longer to come down than the blood sugars. Why do we have a problem? So now we add on to this snackety snack society we have the fact that our food is imperfect. It's been stripped of fibers. Even our raw organic foods have been stripped of fibers. And so fiber is the one thing that's going to slow down that conversion, not the one thing, but the big thing that's going to slow down the conversion of sugars and allow them to be absorbed into your bloodstream. So when carbohydrates don't have fiber, they run through your system and they run like, I don't know, like toddlers into a playroom, and they're like overloading your bloodstream with glucose. And so now you have this insulin cue that goes up. Insulin comes up high, and every time you eat, you're training your body that it needs to have insulin high because it's got to be out there to deal with the blood sugars that you're creating every time you put something in your face. So, in intermittent fasting absolutely works for insulin resistance. It looks like this. When we eat, it takes a couple of hours for our blood sugars to normalize. Okay. And then it takes about 4 hours for them to start to drop back down. It takes around 8 hours for the insulin levels to come down after a regular meal if you're insulin resistant. If you're really insulin resistant, it could take 10 or 12 hours for that number to come back down or that insulin to come back down. Why is that important? Because insulin is a saver and it wants things to grow. So it's trying to get energy to your cell. It's not letting your body burn fat for fuel. It's not letting you break down fat. It's encouraging fat storage, but it's causing this disarray, overactivity in some cells, underactivity in some cells, and your body's just going like, what the heck happened? It all starts with the food and the frequency that we're eating. So at 8 hours, insulin finally starts to come down. The saver, the big bully in your metabolism starts to go, okay, I'm not needed. I can go away now. The playground's okay. When the playground gets cleared from insulin, then glucagon can come out. Now, glucagon is so insulin, anabolic saver, right? Fat storage inhibits fat breakdown. Glucagon, spender, big spender. But insulin won't let glucagon do its job as long as it's out. So we have to get insulin down. That means not eating. Now, glucagon comes out at about 10 hours. Glucagon, when it comes out and it wants to start spinning, it's going to cue the body to start looking for other sources of energy. Things like inflammation, cells that are maybe toxic that could possibly be turning into cancer, cells that are just holding on to old fats and old storage of glucose. It's going to allow that stuff to start breaking down. Human growth hormone, which is really important, not just to the size of us, but to all of our organs, starts to come out. Ketones are coming out, which are telling your body to burn that excess fat for fuel. That's all starting to cue about 2 hours after glucagon comes out. Now we're at 12 hours, right? So at 12 hours, these actions are starting to happen. You're starting to have some gut regeneration. We're starting to have some change in our gut microbiome. We're starting to have a lot of other change going on in the body, but we're starting to ramp up fat burning. Now at hour 14, that fat burning really starts to kick in. So we do a 16-8 fast because now we've let all of this stuff happen. We've allowed insulin to come down. We've allowed the body to say, hey, we need to burn some fat for fuel. So the body's starting to learn a new story. Okay. So a new story being, I don't always have to live off of sugar. I'm not sure what you mean by NAC. Again, I'm not a scientist. I would have to look it up, to be honest. And 4 hours. I don't understand the 4 hours if insulin resistant question. Yeah. Yeah. So, and this is the issue. So I want you to understand, I am not bashing doctors. I've worked for doctors that I absolutely adore. I've worked for doctors that I was like, what are you doing? And I don't want to work for you anymore. But most doctors that I worked for really had the patient's best interest in mind. We got to understand two things. 80% of our doctors here in the US have not had a nutritional class. Only 20% have had nutritional classes, and most of those have only had one. They don't understand nutrition and how it affects the body and how it's affecting the metabolism. Number two, they're not taught about insulin resistance currently in their medical schooling. So it's not something that they learn. Number three, most of the textbooks that they get are written by um, advocates of big pharma or big food, and it does skew. I have a friend who worked in a clearinghouse for some of these studies, and she said they would get 20 studies in. If 18 studies showed negative effects or negative impact for a drug, but two studies showed that the drug was efficacious, those two studies outweighed the 18 studies, and the two studies that showed efficacy were published, while the 18 studies that showed problems were swept under the rug. So it's a whole system, and our doctors are doing the best they can with what they've been given, right? Some doctors are on a mission. They're out there trying to figure out more and learn more. There's a number of doctors who are starting to listen to metabolic scientists like Dr. Bickman and start to expand on their knowledge so they can really address what's happening with us. Now, we're living longer than we used to, right? We all get that. We have more medical interventions. So I'm not saying medicine is bad. I'm saying it's appropriate in the right times. Just like our hormone levels need to be at the appropriate level at the right times. So we don't want to overdo thyroid. We don't want to overdo insulin. We don't want to overdo anything in our body. We want just the right amount at the right time. And that's not what we're getting between the food and the medications that we're getting. So if your doctor's just blindly throwing you a medication for symptoms that are lifestyle related, I want you to ask your doctor if they did a test to find out if you're deficient in that drug. Because all of these things above are from a nutritional deficiency. And if you address the nutritional deficiency, they start to get better. And then if you still need medication on the other end, great. But if you didn't need it in the first place, why be doing it? And there's so much more research coming out about how, and more doctors standing up to how these drug medications, double entendre, these medications for weight loss are actually causing damage to your metabolism and creating more insulin resistance and more of the problem. And then you become a lifelong user of those drugs. I got off of 13 different drugs 2.5 years ago, not on any anymore. Had a short stint with some thyroid replacement. And I'm just going to continue to address my insulin and monitor my thyroid and see how that does. But my thyroid seems to be working better overall just by addressing the insulin resistance. Yeah, so your pick pills. Yeah, so a lot of doctors just aren't educated. And so here's the thing, you guys understand this. Bless the doctors who are out there trying to help our health, right? But they have egos just like the rest of us. And you guys, how hard is it if you're looked up to as an authority in your field? How hard is it for you to look at somebody who's asking you questions and looks up to you to say, dude, I don't know. I just don't know. And so there's a lot of pressure on our doctors, and sometimes they just don't know, but they just don't want to say that they just don't know. And there we have a problem, right? You lost 40 pounds through intermittent fasting before. Now it doesn't work anymore. Can't lose. So we'll talk about that here real quick. Metformin was really hard on my body, and it didn't work either. So I'm going to give you guys 6 simple tips, and then we're going to go into the protocol. I do want to go over the slides for the protocol that I used today and explain a little bit more in depth why it works so well and what's happening with it. But hang on, because we're going to do that. So 6 simple steps to start getting your insulin resistance under control if you want to have a hope of helping your thyroid. So you want to do fiber first. I mentioned that a lot. We're going to talk about fiber in a few moments and the type of fiber that I use. Fiber first. Most of us are only getting in 10 to 15 grams. We should be getting in 30 to 40 grams. So we're getting in less than half of what we need. And so that's important because, like I said, our food has been modified. Even our raw organic food has been modified. We're just not getting the fiber and the nutrients out of it that we used to. And so We have excess calories, excess glucose, not the same nutrition. And that's a problem for us, right? So it does require some supplementation for the nutrients that we're missing. Then we want to do prioritize protein. Most of us are not getting in at least at even a third of the protein that we need to be getting in. A good measure is 1 gram of protein per pound of ideal weight, body weight. So if you want to weigh 150 pounds, 150 grams of protein would be about what you should be getting in a day. And when I work with people and they think they're eating healthy and they're eating a ton of salads, but I don't really hear a lot of protein going in, there's a problem. And that's going to regulate how you can lose weight as well, because your body is starving for certain nutrients. So it's not going to let you let go of stuff. You have to get in a high amount of protein, or the right amount of protein. So I aim to get about 50 grams of protein a sitting on the eating days that I have. Now, fats. We started to talk about fats, or I started to talk about fats, and then I went off track. Would you be interested to know that saturated fats, they're starting to show that saturated fats are both good for insulin resistance and for your thyroid. There was a doctor who did an entire talk on just how much we need saturated fats and how a lot of these thyroid issues started cropping up when we went to this low fat lifestyle and started relying on seed oils, or these like corn oil, vegetable oil things. They started to see a rise in thyroid problems when we started to cut out those healthy saturated fats. So extra virgin olive oil, avocado oil, butter, ghee, coconut oil, and the fats on your animal meats. Those are what you want to be eating, and those can both help insulin resistance and thyroid. I'll try and do some videos on that and link some of the studies to that. But yeah, I was surprised to find a thyroid specialist even talking about how fats are one of the things. Of course, iodine is something, aside from the protocol I do, iodine is something that you can help boost your thyroid with. But all right, so there's that. Now, fiber, protein, fats, right? Then we want to limit carbs. You guys, carbs, I would love everyone to shift from just thinking about rice and bread as carbs. Your vegetables and fruits are carbohydrates as well. Fruits have fructose mixed in with the glucose that it converts in your system. So they rely more heavily on your liver. So I try to be careful with fruits because my liver has been so damaged. I'm not saying don't eat them, but I'm saying don't drink fruit juice, because it's just all the nutrients unwrapped from the fiber and it's causing an excess load on your liver. So fiber, protein, fats, limit your carbs. Do some intermittent fasting. We're going to talk about why intermittent fasting may not be working for you anymore, and then move your body. I don't care whether you're doing simple, you guys, there are so many things on Google, on YouTube, of exercises you can do at home without ever going to the gym, exercises if you have this impairment, that impairment. No excuses. No excuses. Find a way to move your body. It's going to help you be more insulin sensitive and help your basal metabolic rate in the first place, so your thyroid starts functioning more properly. Now, the protocol I use is like this. Let's go over it. I'm going to show this real quick. All right. By the way, the protocol I use is just in my profile link. I'm going to switch the camera around here and show you guys a few things, because I want to go over this in more detail if I don't break everything over here today. Can I get this down? There we are. Okay. So all right, what's happening with insulin resistance looks like this. Remember I talked about, and my screen is, my camera is dirty, always dirty, because I'm always playing with my phone. All right, so fiber, fiber, fiber. If we have food that's turning into glucose too quickly in our system, our glucose levels are going to spike high. That means our insulin has got to go higher to reach that and help deliver that. But now, because we've trained our bodies to utilize this so much that insulin is doing its job too rapidly, you could be ending up with hypoglycemia, reactive hypoglycemia, where your blood sugar levels seemingly drop because there's so much insulin all the time that it's hurrying up and delivering it, because you've told your body that you're going to eat more sugar So insulin's trying to be ready for that next onslaught. And this is what's happening with, okay, so without fiber, this is what's happening. Your blood sugars go up, unmediated, your insulin comes up. Now, when your insulin is up this high, it takes longer for it to come down. Even in a 3-meal day, if you're continually spiking your insulin by having high carbohydrate foods, you're going to continue to spike, and the insulin level just never really comes down. Now, when you slow down the delivery of sugar into your system, your sugars don't spike as high and your insulin follows your blood sugars more closely. So it's coming down. And when insulin is down, you can get into a fat burning mode easier. So what the protocol that I use does is it allows fibers that are missing into your system so that all that can happen. This is just a slide on a number of the things linked to insulin resistance. So just understand that all of this stuff is linked in, even things like inflammation, fatty liver, obesity, PCOS, nephropathy, autism, Parkinson's, all of that can be linked to insulin resistance. We're going to skip past this. I will come back to some easy ways that you guys can tell if it's you. But look at, you guys, I haven't shown this in forever. So this is what I'm talking about with foods. This is what our carrots used to look like and what they look like now. What was stripped out? Fibers and nutrients that gave this carrot its rough, tough, bitter taste so that we now have something that's crunchier, easier to digest, and sweeter. Same thing with watermelons. Used to be full of this rind kind of stuff, really bitter fiber in there, seeds, and very little fruit. So now we have what I affectionately call sugar water in a shell. Corn is a grain, but it looks like a vegetable because we've stripped fibers, nutrients, and allowed it to look like this. Same thing is happening to our grains. All of these layers are being stripped out so we can get to the starchy part in the middle that turns to glucose in our system. Why are we sick? It's because of how our food is being processed and what's happening with it. So the 6 simple principles I just talked about: fiber first, prioritize protein, fill with fat, control carbs, watch the clock, and move your body. I have an ebook. You can get it in my profile link if you guys want the ebook to sit down and read. It's just a short little ebook explaining each one of these steps and why. But you're welcome to download that book. Now, we talked about that. This is that fasting timeline I was talking about, right? So if you eat your dinner about 5 p.m., 6 p.m., and about 8 p.m. is when your fasting actually starts, and then all of these things start to happen. And your digestive system is resetting about hours later, and then we go on down the line until we have our 16-hour fast, and we break it with lunch with this balance beforehand. Balance is a pre-meal drink I'm going to show you in a second that gives you 7 different soluble, insoluble fibers that's helping with all this things. So with the protocol that I do, no medications, it's as simple as this: a tea in the morning that is not breaking my fast and allow me to maximize my fat burning efforts during fast. Before I eat, I have a balance that allows me to convert food more easily without having the high glucose spikes. In fact, this has been shown to reduce a blood glucose spike by 20%. That's huge. Then I wait 4 to 6 hours and have another meal, and that's it. Then I go back into a fasting state and I repeat myself. So if you're doing a fast and you're no longer seeing weight loss results, you may have restricted calories too much along with the fasting. Fasting isn't necessarily about restriction of calories. It's about allowing your metabolic hormones to take place when they need to. So I'm drinking my tea right now. The tea, you guys, this tea, I'm going to flip the camera back around, but it goes through this 5-step process. We hand pick it, so it's the right leaf, the right time, ethically, sustainably harvested. We fire roast it to get these components released from the bulk of the plant, extract it, concentrate it, but then we take it to a 5th step, which is hyper purification. So it removes toxins, pesticides, PAHs from the tea. Now you have a highly potent tea that's much more efficacious than anything that you can find out there on the market. So Dr. Bickman, same guy who talks about this, recently did a talk, and he said that So, and Dr. Huberman talked about it in my tab on the tea on TikTok. There's a video from Dr. Huberman. He talked about how yerba mate can instigate GLP-1 like action in your body. So GLP-1 agonists, those are things like Mounjaro, Trulicity, Tritide, semaglutide, Ozempic, all of those are GLP-1 agonists. What they're doing is trying to get this glucagon-like peptide up in your system, but the manner they do it in can cause damage to your body, to your pancreas, to your gallbladder, to your thyroid. And so this tea naturally encourages, because it's getting nutrients to your body, your glucagon-like peptide by 70% with a natural tea that's not giving you all of those negative side effects. So GLP-1 without injections and side effects, I drink a cup of tea every morning. That's it's crazy how well this tea works. It gives me mental clarity and energy, shuts down my hunger. So this is the Unimate, the tea that I drink in the morning. It helps me feel great all day. I can have it anytime. I don't get crashes from it. I drink it even before bed and still sleep well, because it's not the same thing as like Red Bulls and coffee and all of those highly caffeinated drinks. It's giving me energy without all of that. It also can produce and improve physical performance during exercise by 10 to 15%. We have a number of athletes using it because of the improved mental capabilities, the improved physical capabilities. It also has antioxidant, anti-cancer activity in it. It's got three things called adaptogens. One of them is chlorogenic acids. They promote feelings of well-being. It's one component that can cross the blood-brain barrier, and it has antioxidant effects in the brain. Now you have less brain fog. Now you have less anxiety. Now you have less depression. Now you're starting to function properly, and your hunger actually goes to brain is saying, hey, I'm getting nutrients. Did you know that when your brain is not getting nutrients, you can feel hunger? It's not just it's not just my thing. So then theobromine helps you with mood boosting, and it's 3 times as high in this as in any standard dark chocolate or any high quality dark chocolate. But it also has mate saponins and triterpenoid saponins in it, which are great for healthy triglycerides, the body's ability to burn fat. All of that just from a tea that I drink in the morning, giving me health instead of costing me health. So I can have it any time of day, morning, noon, night, especially before meetings, especially like I have a meeting tonight at 8 p.m. EST talking about the business side of all of it. I will be having tea before then because I want to be super clear on what I'm talking about. Balance now. Balance is that drink that I have before I eat anything. So this is fiber. It has 4 proprietary blends in it, 7 different soluble and insoluble fibers. And why is that important? It's important to know about soluble and insoluble fibers because of this. Soluble fibers soak up water and they expand in your gut. So that's going to help you start to feel fuller longer. The soluble fibers create a mesh. But what that mesh does is it like holds on to unsoluble or the soluble fibers so that they are not just like this gelatin mass floating around. There's some structure to it. But now the two together are taking and encapsulating the foods you eat and slowing down the delivery of that sugar into your system. Not supposed to eat at all? I need clarification on that question. So I'll talk about fasting in a second, but I eat more normally than people would even think. Today is a fast day. Today is an eating day. Yesterday was a fasting day for me because I'm doing a different kind of fast. But I eat like when I get done, I'm gonna probably will have a protein shake because I have a lot to do this morning that has about 40 to 50 grams of protein in it, a good amount of fats, and I will start with fiber, and then I will have I have leftover lasagna that I made for my son the other night, and I'll probably have that for lunch, and then I'll probably have something really high in protein for dinner. So I'm eating 3 meals today, but we'll talk about that in a minute. So The balance is doing a lot of work as well. So the tea is setting me up in a fasting state to burn fat for fuel, to feel well, to get energy to my brain, to enact this LP1 action where it's shutting down hunger and allowing me to feel fuller just from the tea. Then before I eat, the balance, so it looks like this. This is my day. A tea in the morning and a pre-meal before I eat anything. Today, because I'm doing a different fast and I eat 3 times, I'll have 3. That's it. If I was traveling or leaving the house today, I would just throw these in my purse, and that's that. That's that. So a tea morning, a pre-meal drink before I eat anything. The pre-meal drink helps me feel full before I eat. It slows down the delivery of the sugars when I do eat. It's building a better gut microbiome. It has prebiotics in it that are helping feed my probiotics. It's how I started to overcome IBS, lifelong debilitating IBS. And it's 80% better than it ever was. And this is all I've done to change that. So that's the system. You guys, if you're feeling like you have insulin resistance at all, and you just want a more natural way to deal with it and not have all the medications and stuff, you've got to try this. I'm here talking about all the symptoms of insulin resistance every day, and I don't do enough talking about this very simple solution: a tea every morning instead of coffee. You can have your coffee later on. Most people find they don't even want coffee. But a tea in the morning, a pre-meal drink before I eat anything, and that's it. Reversed my diabetes, reversed my sleep apnea, helped my thyroid function start to be better, and so many other things just by addressing my insulin resistance. So there's that. Now, intermittent fasting, let's go back to that. You get tired after, or your husband gets tired after he eats. So the fiber is found in my profile link. You guys, here's the thing. I always tell you to go to my profile. Here's why. Just full, no nonstop, right? If you go to Amazon, eBay, Walmart, there are no authorized distributors there. There's 90-day money back guarantee with this. Do it for 90 days. If your health isn't changing, if you're just not happy, you get your money back. You don't get that guarantee when you go on Amazon, eBay, Walmart. There's a low price guarantee. When you buy it through my link, you're paying the same price as me. You're never paying more. And Amazon, eBay, Walmart, everybody who thought they saved money, when we looked at what they got and what they spent, they actually were spending about $100 more than they needed to because they went to Amazon. And then you're not getting coaching. People are like, hey, I bought it, but nobody's contacted me. Well, you bought it off of some reseller on Amazon who we don't know if it's expired or if it's even pirated product. So there's no authorized distributors there. Just use the link of somebody who's talking about it. It should take you directly to the website of the company to purchase. I don't stock it and ship it. The company does. So I'm a little bit protective about that for your interest as well as mine. So you're just going to find the fiber in my profile links. So if he gets tired after he eats, it's likely he's experiencing some hypoglycemia where his body is delivering that energy so quickly that now he has this crash. Because remember, insulin is probably, I don't know his whole story, so I can't say. I'm just saying in an overall picture. For me, what's probably happening is his insulin levels are so high when he eats, it delivers all that energy really rapidly, but the insulin level is still high. Now his blood sugar levels are low. He feels tired, fatigued, maybe sleepy, maybe even gets some chills after he eats because the metabolism isn't working properly. If you start to do some intermittent fasting, insulin levels down, start to address how quickly sugars are hitting your system, get those insulin levels down, that should start to relieve for him. 2.5 years, 3 years ago now, when I started this, every time I ate, I got cold. I got tired. I felt like I was just going to pass out. I just wanted to crawl under a blanket, suck my thumb, and go to sleep because I was so fatigued. And I kept saying, why is it every time I eat, I get so tired and so cold and get chills? And nobody, not even my doctors, could answer that. The answer really is insulin resistance and the associated hypoglycemia with that. When I started training my body to be more metabolically flexible and get those insulin levels down, I stopped having the fatigue, the chills, all of that after I eat. I hope that helps. Um, okay. So, you guys, that's that for this morning. I hope it made sense. I hope that it helped somebody. If you have more questions, is there something you would like me to talk about tomorrow? Um, I know, some of the hot topics are PCOS, heart problems, liver problems, kidney problems. What is it that you guys are suffering with that you want me to go over in more depth in a live stream, how insulin resistance is affecting it? Is it your sleep apnea? Is it bleeding teeth and gums or vertigo or anxiety, depression, brain fog, ADHD, Alzheimer's, autism, all of that? We just did skin the other day. Uh, I will find something to talk about if somebody doesn't have a preferred topic, but that's that. So I keep thinking about fasting, and I hope that person is there. If you're intermittent fasting and you're still losing weight, like I said earlier, you could have restricted calories too much. I find people do this intermittent fasting and then they are like, oh, well, a little bit is good, a lot is better. So I'm going to do OMAD. There's a difference between OMAD and the 36 and 12 fast that I'm doing, because most people who are doing OMAD are also severely restricting nutritional content and calories, hoping that that's going to give them the weight loss. Again, what it's actually doing at that point, when you're having this huge reduction of calories, is to restrict your metabolism. So you might want to switch up your fasting window. You guys, our body likes to flex a little, and when it gets used to anything, it's going to stop working as well. So if one type of fasting didn't work for you, maybe give it a break. Maybe do some more in-depth fasting for a day or two and then go back. But switch up your fasting a little bit. 16-8 is where I like people to start, right? I'm currently doing a 36 and 12 fast. So right now I'm 37 hours into a fast. And all I've had is tea, water, and I have some supplements I take before bed, and maybe a little fiber yesterday because I was hungry. That's it. Why do I do that? Because at hour 24 and 36, it really, when you're in a fasted state, really cues a lot of cellular turnover. That's what I'm trying to get to. I'm not trying to reduce calories to lose weight. I'm trying to get my cells to turn over, and that's why the 36 and 12 fast. Now, on a 12-hour fasting day, I'm going to have 3 meals, and they're going to be big meals because I still want to get nutrients to my body. So I've let my body regenerate. I've let cells come out. I've let new cells be rebuilt in a more healthy manner. I've reset my gut a little bit. I've reset my brain a little bit. I've reset my liver and my heart a little bit. Now, on this 12-hour period, it's all about nutrition and getting in enough protein, fiber, and fats to my body so that it can start to heal and continue to heal the next 36-hour fast I go into. But when I look at what I eat in a 12-hour day, every other day, and say I was doing a 16-hour fast, and what I typically ate on a 16-8 fast, and I take a week's worth of eating and total all of my nutritional numbers and all of my caloric numbers, I actually have focused on getting in this 12-hour day for the few days a week that I'm eating. I've focused so much on nutrition that I'm still getting in the same type of nutrition and the same type of calories as I would on a 16-8 fast. I just tapped into my body's ability to heal itself by going to 36 hours. It's not about calorie restriction. It's about allowing your body to heal and become metabolically flexible. The more I do this, the more likely it's going to be that all of these things in my body heal even more, and I start to find more normals at 60 years old than I ever thought possible. Okay. So, okay, gut health, IBS, lactose, constipation, Diarrhea. Amazing topic. I don't talk about it enough. So, yes, tomorrow we'll talk about gut health. So, everything from the mouth to the butt, what's happening in your body, how insulin resistance is changing all of that, why you might be having some lactose intolerance, constipation, it goes, I'm severely constipated or I have blowout diarrhea. Probably what's happening. That all has to do with gut microbiome. And yes, a lot of links to insulin resistance. So thank you for that input. We'll totally go over gut health tomorrow and we'll explain that. So look, just you guys, I try to be as transparent as possible. And so at this point, I'm going to say some things that might not be pleasant for everyone. So if you don't want to hear it has to do with gut health, you might want to tune out. But look, I had, amongst everything else, neuropathy and fibromyalgia and anxiety and headaches and all the other stuff listed up there. Beyond that, I had IBS that was getting worse and worse and worse. Not only was I in pain and my mobility was down, but this is so embarrassing, but I'm going to say it because I want people to understand you don't have to be that way. I remember going to a grocery store one night and I'm like, I'm tired, I'm sick, but I got to get this grocery shopping done. It's the end of my shift. I was driving for Lyft and Uber. I'm going to run into the grocery store. I'm going to grab some things so I can eat like I'm supposed to tomorrow. And that's it. So I'm going through the grocery store. At the very end of the grocery store, I feel that pain. And you know what pain I'm talking about. And I'm like, okay, I just have one more thing to grab and I'm going to go straight to the front and use the restroom. I stopped to grab that one more thing and it was too late. Thank God I had a jacket. I had to literally wash myself up in the bathroom because this IBS that we're talking about, if you're not suffering from it, you could never understand. It's debilitating and it messes with your head and you just don't want to go places because you never know when that's going to happen. I don't have those issues now. Okay. So there's hope for that. It's all about getting the insulin under control, the inflammation under control, and the gut microbiome under control. The protocol I use is all I did to fix that. Yeah, grandma, that's like, I mean, it's not fun to talk about, but it's a reality for more people than I know. Um, uh, TikTok. I appreciate them because there were people who are taking live streams and just playing it over and over and over again. And so now they're making us, after about an hour, verify that it's us, and I appreciate that. Okay. So I've had people with Crohn's, with IBS, all tell me that they're doing better just by doing this protocol. A tea in the morning, a pre-meal drink before they eat anything. Yeah, just lay it out there. You know what? The thing is like, okay, again, very personal, but I've known people who tell me they stuff their backside with toilet paper because they never know when this is going to happen and they don't want they want to put a stop in the dam, if you will. And so it's a more common problem than we think and not enough people talk about it. But all of these gut issues are debilitating for so many people, and it doesn't have to be that way when we understand what's going on with our food and why we're that way in the first place. I look forward today to the day when I can say I've done enough work that my gut is ironclad, right? It's getting there. It's getting there. More and more every day, things are normal. I'm so thankful because it's been like that since my 20s, and we could never figure out what was going on. Crazy, right? 20 years of going to doctors and nobody ever said anything. I figure out, I didn't figure it out. I started a protocol to help my diabetes and all this other stuff got better. And that's what took me on this path of figuring out insulin resistance and why we're all getting sick from it. Okay. So we'll talk about gut health tomorrow, and I am out of here. I'm going to go, fix that protein shake and get some more work done. You guys, I know I've been slacking. I look at my channel and I'm like, dude, you haven't done any content worth a buffoon's butt in a while. So I did a video last night. I'll do some today on what we talked about with the thyroid, and we'll be talking about gut health tomorrow. Why should your sugar be so high in the morning? Mama, I don't know if you're doing the protocol. I don't know if you've done any intermittent fasting. I don't know a lot of things. I forgot to talk about A1C. Oh my God. Okay, so with insulin resistance, your blood sugars and your A1C are going to go high until you've been insulin resistant for a while. When you start to see your A1C high and your blood sugars high, you've already been insulin resistant for a very long time. So an A1C of 5.1 means nothing to me. If you have all these symptoms, you're still insulin resistant. And I can go over the mechanisms of how that happens in the morning. But your morning blood sugars, there's a couple of things that happen. When you're insulin resistant and your body is looking for sugar to feed off of and not just fat, your body's naturally going to start to release more sugars into your bloodstream for the energy that it needs. Your blood sugars could be high. Cortisol drives your blood sugars higher because of the little fight or flight response and needing energy. So there's this thing called the dawn phenomenon that affects a number of people where the cortisol rises a little bit. With the cortisol rise, the blood sugar rises, and it happens more in people who are still not quite metabolically flexible. But it doesn't mean that you're not on the right path. You've just got to keep working on it and understand that it didn't take you a week to get sick. It probably took you 10 or 12 years to get sick. You've got to give it some time to get better. Me, I understand that it's probably been 40 years. So 3 years of reversing stuff. Yeah, it's probably going to take me a little while longer to continue to fix all the things that I let just break down in my body because of sugar. But there's a number of reasons why your sugar would be high in the morning. Even if you're doing this system for a while, as your body starts to regulate its metabolism, your blood sugars can be high because it's just so dysregulated. Okay, gut health tomorrow. We'll see you in the morning, Wednesday morning. Tonight, if you guys are interested in what I do for a living, how I do it, what that means, how I went from driving Lyft and Uber 70 hours a week and never having time for family to like tomorrow night's family night. My son deploys here soon, and so I'm trying to do as much as I can for him. Thus the lasagna warmed my heart when he sat down and told my grandson, he said, your grandma's lasagna is the best lasagna in the world. You better appreciate what you're about to put in your mouth. I'm like, oh, you know. So I get family time. I get to travel. I get to have an amazing home. All things that I didn't think were possible 3 years ago. We're going to be talking about it at 8 p.m. Eastern time tonight. Contact me if you want the link to get in on that call where I just take 15 to minutes to a half an hour to explain what I do and how I do it, how you can do it too. If you're interested, get the link from me and I will see you tonight. Otherwise, we'll see you at 8:30 in the morning. Have a great day, guys. Thanks, you guys.